Well, welcome. I appreciate you being here today. My name is Matthew Otero, and I am the Senior Director of Data with tnAchieves. I'll be the person to kind of walk through some of the statewide and then locally Rhea County numbers that we like to present to just all the interested parties in a particular county. This particular week, we are actually doing 91 of these presentations. One is a statewide meeting, and then one for every other county that we serve in the state of Tennessee. So, been doing these quite a lot, but we're glad to share the numbers for each county that we do work in. The reason why we do this is because back in 2015, legislation stated that the county mayor would appoint a group of people and they would make up this local advisory council, and they could provide guidance, feedback, and just kind of a layer of accountability since we are the partnering organization serving the students in this county. We used to do these in person, but obviously the past year and a half has been a little bit different. So we're doing these on Zoom, and it's a fun little change of pace for us. So as you noticed, your mic and camera can be on or off as you please. But if you have any questions, do not feel like you can't interrupt me at all. So, and if you have any questions at the end, we can definitely answer the questions then as well.
Awesome, thank you.
So a quick review of just what tnAchieves is. It is a privately funded 501c3 that is the partnering organization in 90 of the 95 counties in Tennessee for Tennessee Promise. We started in 2008 in Knox County as tnAchieves, and since then we have worked with over 440,000 students, 71,000 volunteer mentors, and then we've worked with over 600 high schools and 67 eligible institutions statewide. You may notice on the map that there are 5 counties that are in gray, and those are students that are also eligible for Tennessee Promise, but their partnering organization in those counties are the Heirs Foundation. So I just want to point that out. The next slide is going to be a representation of some of the initiatives that tnAchieves does and has done since 2008. And then a couple that have been more recent and with the focus on kind of preparedness and retention for students that are in college. So I'll briefly just go over each of them so that there's a history behind each. The big one on the left is the Last Dollar Scholarship. That was with tnAchieves since it was back in 2008 as a private organization. But then it was incorporated when Tennessee Promise went into effect in 2015. That Last Dollar Scholarship is kind of the carrot for a lot of students and families. It lets them know that they can pursue a post-secondary education and have their tuition covered some capacity, either through Tennessee Promise alone or in a combination of Tennessee Promise and other financial aid that they may be eligible for. But in addition to a financial aid, which we know is super helpful for students and families, it's not always the end-all be-all. And so since we started, we've always had students be paired up with a volunteer mentor. This mentor serves as just a resource and an encourager for students as they are kind of getting ready to transition out of high school, as they're graduating, and throughout their summertime before they start school in the fall, and then during their first couple of months as a college freshman. The mentor is not necessarily somebody who's knowledgeable in all things post-secondary, but rather a person that students and the families can go to if they have a question or if they're unsure of something, and know that they'll be able to get an answer in some way. The community service requirement is also something that stayed with us since we started in 2008, and it's from the spirit of giving back, as that little blurb says. For students that are given this opportunity, we feel like it is important that they are also giving back to the community that has given so much to them to get them to that particular point. So every student that wants to remain Tennessee Promise eligible is required to do that before every semester they plan on using the scholarship. So we'll talk a little bit more about that on a slide a little bit later on. The bottom 2 initiatives are initiatives that are, like I said, focused on preparedness and then retention for students that are already in college. So the one with the little sun icon is representing the summer programs that tnAchieves runs. Those programs are called the Summer Bridge Program and Summer Institute. We also kind of uplifted an online bridge program this past year due to COVID. But the main purpose of both of those programs is to take a student who would otherwise kind of be considered at risk and one that is going to have to take learning support classes when they start school, which just means that they weren't quite at the college prepared level based on the ACT or their curriculum in high school. And they would have to take those classes while they were in school. Tennessee Promise would still cover those classes, but it may set them about a semester behind. And so with the programs, they can either do the Summer Bridge program, which is 3 weeks long, or the Summer Institute, which ranges from year to year, but is usually between 6 and 10 weeks long, and get the opportunity to test out of those learning support classes. They are all taking English, math, and reading classes in the Summer Bridge program, and they get to test at the beginning and at the end of the semester or end of the summer. The Summer Institute works a little bit differently, where they are taking college level classes that allow them to test out of those learning support classes immediately, and then also get to take classes that will earn them college credit. And that's a little bit why it's longer. The Summer Bridge program is throughout the state. All 13 community colleges across 15 campuses host one. And whereas the Summer Institute is currently only focused in Memphis and working with kind of the urban core of Memphis. But our hope is that that will one day become a statewide program, just like the Summer Bridge program. And the reason why we bring that up is because we have seen the data from both of those that the students are not only becoming more prepared and kind of ease their way into school, but they're also testing out of those learning support classes. With our most recent Summer Bridge program cohort, they were able to have a success rate of 89%, which meant that they were either improving or testing out. And from our Summer Institute group, we had 29 students who at 100% rate tested out of their classes and earned college credit. So these more kind of at-risk students, yeah, we were really excited about that because otherwise without these programs, these at-risk students would have been starting pretty much a semester behind and now are either right on par with where they would want to be to start school or going into it with 9 credit hours. So that's one thing that we focus on. And then something that's been for the last couple of years is our complete program. And what that program essentially is every student across the 90 counties that we serve that is from a low income background is going to be paired up with one of our complete coaches. We currently have about 18 on staff, and they work with the different service areas across the state. So each area across the state is broken up into their community college group. And those coaches are kind of taking the baton from the volunteer mentors that I mentioned earlier and making sure that they continue to have this resource and have somebody that's going to be checking in on them throughout their college career, as well as being able to kind of help them navigate the college system, whether it's at their current school or if it's one that they're thinking about transferring to in the future. And so this program is something that we've found a lot of success with and something that we have been glad that we've been able to expand statewide. And so we'll talk about some of those numbers a little bit later on as well. So this is going to just show sort of the reach of what Tennessee Achieves does. Once again, it's showing those high schools, counties, colleges that we work with, but it gives you a little bit more in depth of how many counties across the state are considered rural and how many are considered at risk or distressed, according to the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. And so it shows us that, one student that we're working with in one county may be very different from another. So how are we able to really make sure that we're making an impact throughout the whole state? The bottom line is then showing you if a student applies for Tennessee Promise, goes through the Tennessee Achieves program, and then uses Tennessee Promise, they are going to one of these 3 types of schools at this percentage point. So across the state, about 8 out of 10 are going to the local community college, and the other 20% are going either pretty much right down the middle between a Tennessee College of Applied Technology, the TCAT, or one of the eligible 4-year universities that accepts Tennessee Promise.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you know this off the top of your head. Don't look it up, but is Rhea County one of the at-risk or distressed counties?
I do not actually know that in the top of my head, but at the end of this
Sorry.
meeting, I can definitely look it up or I can shoot you an email for sure, Emily.
It's fine. You've got plenty of these presentations to do. I should know that because this is not my first year to do this. When I saw it presented like this, I just wondered.
Right, yeah, so this is just the statewide level number, but I should definitely know this as well. So note for myself for future ones, but I can definitely get that to you as well after this presentation.
Okay.
Cool. This next slide is going to continue to look at us from a statewide level. Tennessee Achieves annually is working with over 60,000 high school seniors. A couple of years ago, we actually hit our most for a single cohort, and that was over 64,000.
Wow.
So a lot of students, but with a staff of 30, we're not going to be able to really work with them individually on the level that we would want to. And so just as another plug-in, it's kind of like that's where the mentors really come into play and why it's played such a crucial role for us as we've grown since we started in 2008. But to look at just the data points, you can see that of Tennessee high school seniors across the state that are applying for Tennessee Promise, we are receiving 89% of the Tennessee high school senior group. So that other 11% across the state are either seniors that are not applying for Tennessee Promise, or they are being in counties that are represented by the Heirs Foundation. So we're basically getting almost 9 out of 10 seniors across the state. In addition, of the students that are applying for Tennessee Promise and then going through the Tennessee Achieves program, they are making up 78% of the first-time full-time freshmen at a community college. So almost 8 out of 10 students at the local community college are students that have gone through the Tennessee Achieves program. And then 86% are students that are graduating from the community colleges, are students that have gone through the Tennessee Achieves program. The middle ground there is going to show you the numbers related to just some kind of interesting facts for us. So it shows that of those students that apply for Tennessee Promise, over half of them, 56%, are also eligible for federal aid. So things like a federal Pell Grant. And that's important because as long as the student's applying for Tennessee Promise, that means that they are receiving the communication from us. They are understanding certain requirements that are asked of them. And even if they don't go through them all, they know how important the FAFSA then is. And then that FAFSA, whether or not they remain eligible or not, is still being kind of an application of them for sorts for different financial aids. The FAFSA helps for Tennessee Promise, but it also determines any Pell Grant funding and is also the application for the Hope Scholarship for students. So that's a super crucial role for every senior, regardless if they are planning on using Tennessee Promise as their main plan. 40% of students are identifying as first-generation college students. That's self-reported, but we just kind of like to point that out, that that's what students are classifying, or they believe that they are, at least when they are signing up for Tennessee Promise. And then 51% when they are starting college are pursuing majors either in the health science or STEM-related fields. And that's an important thing because we know that the state's ultimate goal is to attract employers to the state and then make sure that they have the workforce that can fill those roles. And since a lot of future roles or job titles are going to be in those related fields, it's very much a good thing that we have the students that are pursuing those types of majors. And then the bottom line is going to be what the annual cost is from the state for Tennessee Promise and what Tennessee Achieves operating cost is to run the program across the 90 counties. A note for Tennessee Achieves operating costs, it's almost all privately fundraised with just a small portion coming from the state. All right, so we are about to go to the FAFSA filing rate and community service, but I saw that Stacy joined us, so I just wanted to let Stacy know that at any point, if you have any questions, you can definitely ask. I don't want you to feel like you can't ask anything. So this next slide right here is going to represent the FAFSA filing rate for both the state and Rhea County, and it's also going to show the number of community service hours completed by county and by the state. As I mentioned a little bit earlier on, the FAFSA is a super critical piece for each student. And so this is what the FAFSA filing rate looked like for this most recent cohort. For both, it's a little bit of a decrease from the previous year. At the statewide level, we were at 90%. And we know that a lot of that has to do with the fact that last year was an unusual year, whether it was because students didn't apply for Tennessee Promise to begin with, or the fact that, when they were in school, it was made virtual or it was a back and forth. The fact that the faculties, were managing just how could they run a high school, let alone focusing on so many other different things that, COVID played a role in a lot of this. And so although those numbers are not necessarily reflective of what they used to be, we are confident that we can get those numbers back again after kind of reviewing what went wrong, what did we do well, and what didn't we do well for the students that we were serving. But we want to kind of present that to everybody. In addition, the community service numbers are just showing you how much the students in that county have given back. So Rhea County students have given almost 17,000 hours in the time frame that they've been Tennessee Promise eligible. And from a statewide level, they're contributing to the almost 3.4 million hours that have been completed. That number is something we're really proud of. Our chairman, Randy Boyd, says that kind of makes us the largest community service organization in the state, kind of in a joking way, but we're kind of just running with that internally because we know that that's a lot of hours, and it's something that is really cool to see over the course of the past 12 to 13 years that we've been doing this. As we continue to look at the numbers, we can see what Rhea County looked like for the class of 2019 when it came to applicants that enrolled with Tennessee Promise, and then what their first year retention rate looked like. You'll then see that there's a bottom row that is going to show the 3-year graduation rate for both the county and the state, and that's from the class of 2017. As we're looking at those numbers, remember that that Tennessee Promise applicant number is going to be about 90% of the senior class for both the county and the state. It can obviously differ from county to county, but on a statewide level, that's about 90% of the seniors. And then the numbers that are enrolled with Tennessee Promise, there is a drop off, but it's important to remember that not everybody that applies for Tennessee Promise is going to actually end up using it at one of the eligible institutions. A student may be applying and it may be their plan B or C, because maybe they're planning on going to one of the UT schools or MTSU or any other school across the state of Tennessee that isn't eligible for Tennessee Promise, or an out-of-state school. So that's why you'll see the number obviously drop off a little bit. But then when we look at the first year retention rate, we can see that Rhea County is right with the state level, actually 1% better than the statewide level of 67%. And so that means that they're staying right in par with where the rest of the state is. Obviously, that number is not where we want it to always be, but the fact that Rhea County is right above the statewide level, that is very much a positive. In addition, if we look at the graduation rate, Rhea County is again 1% higher than the statewide level. And so looking at the retention and graduation rates, we want to understand that we are glad that they are where they are, because it has shown a growth from when we started in 2008. But we don't want only 1 out of 3 students to eventually end up graduating. And so we are, like I said, putting a lot of our focus on what it looks like for retention purposes. And so I will talk again a little bit about what some of those initiatives look like, but I want to show you the statewide level for both first year retention and 6-year graduation rate and kind of how it compares with different cohorts. So those that are in the gray boxes are going to show you just students that are going to a community college and are first-time full-time freshmen when they start. This can be Promise students, but it can also be students that are going that are not Promise eligible. And so if we look at their first year retention rate, we can see that they're retaining at a 53% level. But when we compare it to students that are applying for Tennessee Promise, going through the tnAchieves program, getting the volunteer mentor, getting the communication every week, getting opportunities like job shadowing, they are retaining at a 67% level, which is what we saw on the previous page, and that Rhea County was actually 1% better at. And then if we take one more step back and we look at just students that apply for Promise, go through the tnAchieves program, and then go to any college, so that can be in-state, out-of-state, Promise eligible, or not Promise eligible, they are retaining at a 74% level. So we're seeing that some of the things that we are doing as an organization are making an impact and preparing the student so that they can retain at whatever college they do end up going to. The same can be seen in the graduation rate. So that 35% is just students at the community college level when they start as a full-time, first-time freshman. Whereas for students that go through the tnAchieves program and then go to a community college, we're seeing that they're graduating at a 51% level. So much better than the statewide average, but something that we're still not satisfied, that we want to get that number to go up higher. And the way we're doing that is through those different programs that we have initiated. So I talked to you a little bit earlier, Emily, about the summer programs. We can see that students that are in that cohort, and this was about just under 5,000 students, they were retaining at an increase of 34%. So, those students are just more prepared, and it seems like we're seeing that outcome when it comes to the retained from year 1 to year 2. The complete program, which is the students that are receiving that coach that works with them on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, kind of filling the role of the mentor, are retaining by 23% higher. And then there's Knox Promise, which is a program that is only in Knox County currently, but through private donation, we're able to do what is that complete program in Knox County, but for every student. So instead of just pairing up students with a low income background, every student in Knox County gets paired up with a complete coach on tnAchieves staff. And in addition to that coach, they're also able to apply for what are called completion grants. Completion grants kind of are better known as emergency funding almost in some places. And what they are an opportunity for students that maybe are encountering different challenges, things like food insecurities, transportation issues, cost of books and materials, things that would otherwise maybe cause them to drop out or make them really not focus on school. They're able to request funding for that. And so just from the cohort alone that has been in the first couple of years of Knox Promise, we're seeing them retain at a greater level of 42%. And so it's something that we're really motivated by, something that we're really encouraged of, and that we're currently working on trying to get to be more of a statewide model. So that way, every student in every county, regardless of where they are from, if they're coming from a low income background, would be able to apply for things like that complete grant request. The next slide is going to show us the college going rate. And so this is just showing you from a statewide level how many students were pursuing, college after they graduated high school. And we can see there was a big jump between 2014 and 2015, and that happens to be when Tennessee Promise went into effect. And then after that went into effect, we saw for the next 5 years that it stabilized right between 62 and 64%. And then 2020 happened. And again, we see kind of COVID rear its ugly head, and we see that the college going rate decreased by almost 5%. And so that's something that we're very mindful about. I know all of the partnering organizations and colleges are aware of that. And then if we look at Rhea County, we can see there was also a small dip, but not quite as drastic, of the college going rate. And so really, it's about making sure that students are applying, that they are going through a program where they are getting the communication, they're getting the volunteer mentor, that they are as prepared as possible. So what can be done kind of on a local level, whether it's a local advisory council or just an interested mentor, it really is going to be applying to be a mentor again. In Rhea County, we need 50. I checked this morning, and currently we have 4 already for the class of 2022. So that number is really 46 as of right now. But essentially going to our website online and just taking the few minutes to apply, either if they're a new mentor or a returning mentor, is going to be the key to us really stabilizing those numbers and getting them back to the levels that we're used to seeing them. The reason that is because, as I talked about earlier, the mentor is somebody who is going to be the task manager, the resource, the encourager, somebody that is helping guide them along this whole process. And the reason why we find like this is such an important thing is because the seniors from this class of 2022 are students that otherwise maybe didn't really have a normal junior year. For the most part, may have been virtual or a hybrid. And now as a senior may also be something of that, depending on how the rest of the year shakes out. And so having somebody or having just a group of resources, things like Tennessee Achieves, their high school staff, the college staff that they end up going to, and their mentor is going to help in so many ways of making sure that they figure out what it is that they want to do. And so if you have been a mentor in the past, you know that you've been able to call, text, and email students. This past year, we introduced Tennessee Achieves Connect, which was kind of the virtual platform that both students and mentors can communicate in one place. That's going to be there still today. We're still trying to figure out what is the best way that we can make it be even better than it was last year. And all of that is going to be still with just the 12-hour commitment that we ask of mentors. One thing that is going to be a little bit different from last year is we will host what are called open houses. So smaller gatherings compared to what the team meetings used to be like, where we would house them together in a gym or in a cafeteria. And these open houses will take place on one of the local college campuses near the county, and it will have a Tennessee Achieves staff member, and it will also have some of the college staff members there. So that way mentors and students can just have a place to be and interact with one another. And if they have questions specific to either Tennessee Promise or to the college in general, they'll have somebody there already ready for them. And so that'll be one of the new things that we do this year, as well as we're going to kind of encourage mentors if they feel comfortable. Feel free to meet up with students, kind of in a group, if that works for them. We know that like our chairman, he will get together with his group of students and they'll all get together and have pizza. Obviously, we know 2021, 2022 may be a little bit different than what it was in the past, but if all parties are interested, that's also something that we will encourage mentors to do, which we hadn't really done in the past. So the deadline to be a mentor is December 3rd. They can go to our website. But other ways that you can help, or that anybody who's watching this later on can help, is just really spreading the word about what it's like to be a mentor. If you have like a listserv or a group of people that you would like to share information to, by all means, let them know. But if you would like that information from us specifically, we can get you PowerPoints, we can get you written communication, we can get you social media images, whatever it is, the way that you want to kind of spread that news, we can get that to you. Either you can reach out to me, or you'll see on the screen mentors at tnAchieves.org. They can also provide that information for you. But another way is if you're part of a local group, whether it be a Rotary, a Chamber, Kiwanis, Lions Club, any sort of group, and you feel that they would be interested in hearing about this, let us know and we'll try to schedule something in person. We'll work with them to find a date and time, and we'll be there in person and spread the news of what it's like to be a mentor and the sort of impact that they can have for the community in general and the statewide general community. And the last thing is just spreading the news that Tennessee Promise is open for the class of 2022. That opened up in early August, and we just want to make sure that every student is indeed applying if they want to, because we've seen through some of the data that we presented here today that if they're at least going through the Tennessee Achieves program, and even if they're not planning on using Tennessee Promise specifically, they are retaining at a higher level and graduating at a higher level compared to the students that aren't going through the Tennessee Achieves program. So either mentor, spread the news about mentoring, or letting people know that the Promise application is open is going to really be the best way that the community themselves can help us. So that's kind of everything that I have to present today, but this is my information, my number, and my email. But are there any questions that I can help answer or clarify for you, Emily or Stacy?